Hi everyone. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy our stories, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support means a lot and helps the channel continue to grow. Now, let's begin today's story. My name is Sophie Collins and I'm 33 years old. I work as a senior financial compliance analyst in San Francisco, which means I spend my days finding the small inconsistencies people hope no one will notice. I never imagined the most important one would be handed to me by my own father. He walked into my apartment on a Monday evening, dropped a printed bill on my kitchen counter, and tapped the total with one finger. $20,000. Your brother needs tuition, a dorm, a laptop, and a meal plan. He said, "You're the oldest. Paying it is your job." I looked at the page, then at him. There was no request in his voice, only an order dressed up as family duty. I had already helped my parents with insurance, repairs, and more temporary emergencies than I could count. This time I pushed the paper back. Find someone else. His face tightened. He warned me that selfish choices had consequences, then left without saying goodbye. 3 days later, I stopped by my parents' house to return a box of holiday decorations. Before I reached the living room, I heard my father speaking behind the half-closed dining room door. "Relax, we'll corner her at Christmas dinner." My mother laughed. She won't say no in front of everyone. Then my younger brother said something that made every number on that bill feel like a trap. Not an expense. I stepped away before they saw me. They believed Christmas would make me easier to control. What they did not know was that I had spent my entire career following money, documenting lies, and waiting until people committed to their version of the truth. On December 25th, they placed that bill in front of the whole family and their plan collapsed before dessert. Before I show you how their Christmas trap fell apart, tell me, what time is it where you are? Where are you watching from? And what is the weather like there? Does it match your mood today? I'm curious to see how far my story will travel. My father's name was David. My mother's was Nana, and my younger brother was Tyler. In our family, David made declarations. Na softened them into guilt, and Tyler waited for the result. I had spent years pretending that arrangement was merely old-fashioned, standing in the hallway with their Christmas plans still echoing behind the door. I finally admitted what it was: a system. They assigned me the role of dependable daughter because dependable people were easier to invoice. I did not confront them that night. Anger wanted me to burst through the door and expose what I had heard, but my professional instincts were louder. People who expected an emotional reaction rarely prepared for an audit. I went home, placed the $20,000 bill under the lamp on my desk, and studied it as though it had arrived from a client. The school logo was slightly blurred. The tuition line used a different font from the housing line. The document listed a premium meal plan that the university's public website did not offer. And the laptop charge appeared as around $3,000 with no vendor, model, or tax. At the bottom, a sentence claimed payment was due before Christmas, even though the academic calendar showed the next payment deadline in January. None of those details proved fraud by themselves, but together they told me the document had been assembled to create urgency. The next morning, I called Jake Ramirez, my cousin, and one of Tyler's closest friends. Jake had helped Tyler move into campus housing and had mentioned months earlier that Tyler received a merit award. I kept my question narrow. "Did Tyler ever show you his actual student account?" Jake went quiet. "Why Dad gave me a $20,000 bill and ordered me to pay it." He exhaled slowly. "Sophie, Tyler told me the remaining balance was around $6,000. That number matched the public tuition estimate after the scholarship." Jake remembered. I asked whether he had proof. Jake hesitated, not because he wanted to protect a lie, but because he was tired of being pulled into Tyler's problems. Finally, He forwarded a screenshot Tyler had sent him while complaining about money. The student portal showed a balance of $6,240. It also showed a merit scholarship and a payment from something labeled Lawson Family Education Trust. The trust name stopped me cold. Our grandmother had created that account years ago to help the grandchildren with education. When I attended college, my father told me the fund was too small to help me and that preserving it for emergencies was the responsible choice. I had worked nights, accepted loans, and graduated believing I had protected the family from hardship. If the trust was now paying Tyler's expenses, why was anyone asking me for $20,000? I called my Aunt Margaret, my father's older sister and the only relative who had ever challenged him without apologizing afterward. She was co-supervisor of the trust, though David handled the routine statements. Margaret, do you know what the trust paid toward Tyler's school this semester? Her silence was different from Jake's. It was the silence of someone opening a locked drawer in her mind. It should have covered $12,000, she said. David told me the transfer was completed in August. Jake's screenshot shows a transfer, but Tyler still owes $6,000. Dad is demanding $20,000 from me. That makes no sense. Can you send me the latest trust statement? I'll request it from the bank, she said. But Sophie, don't accuse anyone until we know where the money went. I agreed. After the call, I examined the bill again and noticed a faint gray box behind the total. Someone had pasted the number over an original amount. When I enlarged the scanned image, the edge of a 6 was visible beneath the 2. That evening, Tyler called me. His tone was cheerful, almost rehearsed. Dad said, "You're stressed about the school payment. I get it. 20 grand sounds like a lot, but it would really take pressure off everyone. Send me the official invoice from your student portal. I can't access it right now. You sent Jake a screenshot yesterday." The cheer disappeared. Why are you talking to Jake about me? Because the numbers do not match. He accused me of treating him like a criminal. I told him I was treating the bill like a document. Then I asked one question. What is the extra $13,760 for? He did not answer. Instead, he said, Christmas was supposed to be about family, and hung up. By the end of that day, I understood two things. Tyler knew the bill was false, and my parents expected the dinner table to do what the document could not. They believed witnesses would make me obedient. I decided witnesses would make the truth impossible to bury. 2 days later, Aunt Margaret called while I was leaving work. She had received a transaction summary, not the full statement, and what it showed was worse than a simple, exaggerated bill. The Education Trust had transferred $12,000 for Tyler in August, just as she expected. But 6 weeks later, David had authorized 2 withdrawals marked educational reimbursement. One was $8,500. The other was $7,200. Neither payment had gone to the university. Your father said he was reimbursing costs he had already covered. Margaret told me I trusted him because he was the acting trustee. Did he provide receipts? No. I did not ask for them. Her voice carried shame, but the responsibility was not hers alone. David had built his authority on the assumption that questioning him was disrespectful. Even Margaret, the strongest person in the family, had learned to choose peace until peace became expensive. I asked her not to mention our conversation yet. Before I exposed anything publicly, I wanted to give my father one private opportunity to correct it. Not because he deserved protection, but because I needed to know whether he would choose honesty when no audience forced him. I went to my parents' house that Saturday afternoon. David was in the garage polishing the hood of a recently purchased SUV. He had told everyone the vehicle was necessary because the old one was becoming unreliable. The temporary registration was still taped inside the windshield. "We need to talk about Tyler's bill," I said. He kept polishing. "I thought we settled that." "You ordered me to pay it. That is not a settlement." He dropped the cloth onto the workbench. You always turn family matters into negotiations, and you always turn your decisions into my obligations. His jaw tightened. I placed a copy of Tyler's real account balance on the hood between us. He owes $6,240. The trust already paid $12,000. Where did the rest of the $20,000 demand come from for a fraction of a second? His eyes moved toward the SUV. That glance answered more than his words. He said college costs changed constantly. He said Tyler needed a financial cushion. He said a good sister would care about reducing her brother's stress instead of interrogating him, when none of that worked. He reached for the oldest weapon in our family. After everything your mother and I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us. The sentence pulled me backwards 17 years. I was 16, standing in the same garage holding an envelope from a statewide academic competition. I had won $1,500. David congratulated me, then explained that Tyler needed new equipment for a summer sports program. He called it a temporary family loan. I handed over the check. No one ever mentioned repayment. A year later, when I needed application fees for college, I worked extra shifts at a grocery store while my parents told relatives I was independent by nature. That memory had once made me feel proud. Now it looked like the first entry in a ledger I had refused to total. You did not raise me so I could become your emergency account, I said. David stepped closer. Be careful. Sophie, success has made you arrogant. No. Success made me capable of recognizing a false invoice. His expression changed. He had expected resistance, but not evidence. I lowered my voice and gave him the chance I had come to offer. Tell me the truth now. Cancel the Christmas ambush. Explain where the trust money went, and I will let the family address this privately. He stared at me for several seconds, then smiled without warmth. There is no ambush. You are imagining enemies because you cannot handle being asked to contribute. The garage door opened behind me. Tyler walked in carrying shopping bags from an electronics store. He stopped when he saw the real account balance on the SUV. What is this? He asked. You tell me, I said. Why does Dad need $20,000 when your balance is $6,000? Tyler looked at David before answering. That instinctive glance confirmed their alignment. The rest is for next semester, he said. The document says current tuition, dorm, laptop, and meal plan. Then Dad described it wrong. David immediately took the exit Tyler offered. Exactly. It was an estimate. You are creating a scandal over wording. I pointed to the shopping bags. Is the $3,000 laptop in there? Tyler pulled them behind his leg. That is none of your business. It became my business when you put it on my bill. My mother appeared in the doorway and asked why I was ruining the weekend. She did not ask whether the bill was real. She asked why I would not let the matter go. That distinction ended my last doubt about her role. I picked up the papers. You have until Christmas morning to tell the family yourselves. David laughed. And if we do not? Then I will. He told me no one would believe that I had been mistreated after everything they had done for me. I walked past him without arguing. At the end of the driveway, Tyler called my name and warned me not to embarrass him in front of the family. I turned around. You are not afraid of being embarrassed. You are afraid of being accurately described. For the first time. Neither of them had an answer. The week before Christmas, my family's group chat became a campaign. My mother posted old photographs and wrote about how grateful she was that her children always supported one another. David shared an article about successful adults helping relatives with college. Tyler added a message about being terrified that financial problems would destroy his future. None of them mentioned my name, but every sentence pointed toward me. Relatives responded with hearts, prayers, and offers of encouragement. Then my Uncle Paul wrote, Tyler is lucky to have a big sister who can help. My mother reacted with a heart before I had time to read it twice. That was their strategy in miniature. Announce my generosity before I agreed to it. Then make refusal look like betrayal. I did not defend myself in the chat. Instead, I saved screenshots and sent one message. I look forward to discussing the complete financial picture together on Christmas. The conversation stopped for 3 hours. Aunt Margaret obtained the full trust records 2 days later. We reviewed them at my apartment with Rachel Morgan, a friend from work who specialized in internal investigations. Rachel was not the kind of friend who told me I was right simply because I was hurt. She challenged assumptions, separated facts from emotion, and asked what each piece of evidence actually proved. The records showed that the trust had started the year with $39,600. $12,000 went legitimately to Tyler's university. The 2 later withdrawals totaling $15,700 went into a joint account held by my parents. From there, $9,400 was paid to an auto dealership. Another $4,800 went toward a contractor renovating their kitchen. The remaining amount was transferred to Tyler. Tyler had used part of it to pay a deposit on an off-campus apartment he did not need because his dorm contract already covered the year. He had also purchased a high-end computer, not for required coursework, but for a gaming and content creation setup he had shown off online. The missing trust money explained the fake bill. David wanted me to replace what he had diverted before Margaret completed the annual accounting. If I paid $20,000, he could cover Tyler's real balance, refill most of the trust, and preserve the appearance that nothing improper had happened. My parents' new SUV and kitchen would remain untouched. Tyler would keep the apartment and equipment. I would absorb the cost and be praised for helping. Rachel arranged the documents by date. "You need to decide your goal," she said. "Do you want an apology? Repayment, distance, or public exposure?" "All 4, I answered, then corrected myself. "No, I want the truth documented. The consequences can follow from that." That distinction mattered. Revenge driven only by anger could be dismissed as cruelty. Accountability supported by evidence was harder to escape. Margaret wanted to confront David immediately, but I reminded her of his plan. He had chosen Christmas because he believed the family audience belonged to him. If we spoke too early, he would rewrite the story, claim a misunderstanding, and tell everyone I had attacked him over a private bookkeeping error. We agreed to let him present his demand first. I prepared 3 folders. The first contained Tyler's actual student balance, scholarship information, and the altered bill. The second contained the trust statements, bank transfers, and receipts connected to the SUV, renovation, and apartment. The third contained a letter ending every voluntary payment I made on my parents' behalf. For nearly 4 years, I had paid their supplemental insurance premiums and property tax installments whenever David claimed cash flow was tight. The total averaged $1,150 a month. I had never called it support because my parents preferred the word help, as though the payments appeared occasionally instead of arriving on schedule. I canceled the next transfers and printed confirmation. I also prepared a written boundary. I would not fund Tyler's tuition, replace money removed from the trust, co-sign loans, or respond to financial requests delivered through relatives. Any future contact with my parents would depend on repayment and a direct acknowledgement of what they had done. On Christmas Eve, Tyler called again. "You are really going to make Dad beg?" he asked. I asked for the truth. He is under pressure. So am I. You can afford $20,000. That does not make it yours. His voice sharpened. You care more about being right than about this family. I looked at the 3 folders on my table. No. Tyler, I care enough about this family to stop financing its lies. He told me I would regret walking into Christmas dinner with that attitude. After we hung up, My mother texted that my father planned to make a special family announcement before dessert. She added, "Please do not create a scene." I replied, "I won't create one. I'll bring the records for the scene you already planned." Christmas morning arrived with no confession, no canceled dinner, and no apology. At 4 in the afternoon, I placed the folders in my bag and drove to the house where I had spent most of my life trying to earn a place I already should have had. This time, I was not going there to be accepted. I was going there to close the account. By the time I arrived, 11 relatives were already gathered in the living room. Coats covered the guest bed. Music played from a speaker near the tree. And the dining table had been arranged as though presentation could guarantee harmony. David greeted me at the door with an embrace that lasted just long enough to look affectionate from across the room. "There she is," he announced. "Our successful daughter." The word successful sounded less like praise than an estimate of available funds. Na kissed my cheek and whispered, "Please remember that today is about family." Tyler avoided my eyes. He was wearing a new watch and talking loudly about his plans for the coming semester. Aunt Margaret sat near the window, calm and unreadable. Rachel was not present. We had agreed that the evidence needed no outside advocate. The records would speak, and Margaret could verify the trust. Dinner began normally. David carved the roast. Na asked everyone to share one thing they appreciated, and Tyler described college as the hardest challenge of his life. When my turn came, I said I was grateful for clear records and second chances. Margaret lowered her glass to hide a brief smile. After the main course, David tapped his spoon against his glass. "I want to talk about something important," he said. "Tyler has worked incredibly hard, but education is expensive. As parents, Na and I have done everything we can. Now it is time for the next generation to carry family responsibility." He reached beneath his chair and placed the altered bill on the table in front of me. "Sophie has been blessed with a strong career," he continued. "We are asking her to pay $20,000 for her brother's tuition, dorm, laptop, and meal plan." No one spoke immediately. The silence was exactly what he wanted. Every face turned toward me, and the demand transformed into a performance of generosity I was expected to complete. Uncle Paul nodded. "That is a lot. But family helps family." My mother leaned toward me. "You do not have to decide this second. Sweetheart, just tell everyone you will take care of it, and we can work out details later." There it was, the corner they had planned. I placed my napkin beside my plate. "Before I answer, I would like Tyler to confirm the amount." Tyler shifted in his chair. "It is roughly $20,000, roughly. College costs change." "What is the exact balance on your student account?" David interrupted. "This is not an interrogation. It is a request for $20,000. Exact numbers are reasonable." Tyler looked around the table, searching for sympathy. "About $6,000 right now, but there are future costs." I removed the first folder from my bag and slid a copy of his account statement toward the center of the table. "The balance is $6,240. Your merit scholarship has already been applied. Your dorm and meal plan are already included. You also received $12,000 from the Lawson Family Education Trust." Uncle Paul picked up the page. My mother's hand froze around her glass. David recovered quickly. "The $20,000 includes next semester and emergencies." I placed the altered bill beside the authentic statement. "Then why does this document describe the amount as current tuition, dorm, laptop, and meal plan? Why was the $6,000 total covered with a $20 tithe? 000 total. And why does it claim payment is due before Christmas when the university deadline is in January?" Tyler's face flushed. "I did not make that document." Every eye moved to David. He laughed once. "I created a family estimate. That is not a crime. I did not call it a crime. I called it false. Nah stepped in. Sophie, your father may have formatted it badly, but his intention was to protect Tyler. Must you humiliate him over a spreadsheet I gave him a private chance to explain? He chose this table. Aunt Margaret spoke for the first time. David, where is the rest of the education trust? The room changed. Until then, several relatives had treated the dispute as a sibling disagreement. Margaret's question exposed a second layer, and David knew it. The trust is fine, he said. Then answer her, I replied. It began the year with $39,600. $12,000 went to Tyler's university. What happened to the other withdrawals? David's eyes hardened. You had no authority to access those records. Margaret set down her fork. I did. I am the co-supervisor and I requested them. My mother looked at her as though Margaret had broken an agreement. You went behind our backs. No, Margaret said. I reviewed an account I am legally responsible for. I opened the second folder. The first page showed the $8,500 withdrawal. The next showed the $7,200 withdrawal. Then came the transfers into my parents' joint account. I passed copies in both directions. Paper moved from hand to hand, and with every page. David's control weakened. The money did not go to school. I said $9,400 went to the dealership where Dad bought the SUV. $4,800 went to the kitchen contractor. The remainder went to Tyler for an unnecessary apartment deposit and personal equipment. Tyler pushed back from the table. Dad said he would replace it. With my money, I said. No. Meek, David snapped. With family money. Everything in this family is shared. Then why were the SUV and renovations shared with you while the debt was assigned to me? He pointed at me because you can afford it. You sit there with your salary and your apartment and act as though you built everything alone. I built it while you told me the education trust could not help me. Aunt Margaret turned sharply toward him. Snorts. You told Sophie there was no money for her. David said nothing. I continued, my voice quieter now. I worked nights. I took loans. I handed over scholarship money as a teenager because you said Tyler needed it more, for years. I paid your insurance and property taxes because you said you were struggling. All the while, you treated my stability as a resource you could allocate without consent. My mother's eyes filled, but her words were still defensive. We were trying to keep everyone afloat. You were trying to keep your lifestyle intact. Uncle Paul stared at the dealership receipt. David, did you use trust money for the SUV? David folded his arms. I borrowed it. I intended to repay it. When Margaret asked, he glanced toward the altered bill. No one needed him to answer. The trap had collapsed. But the worst part for them was not that I had refused to pay. It was that everyone could now see what my payment had been designed to hide. David tried to regain control by standing. He said private finances had no place at Christmas and accused Margaret and me of turning a temporary loan into a public execution. But the authority in his voice no longer matched the room. Relatives were no longer looking at me as the ungrateful daughter. They were looking at him as the man who had presented a false bill to conceal money he had already taken. Na reached for the emotional escape. Sophie, even if mistakes were made, exposing this in front of everyone is cruel. I met her eyes. 3 days after I refused, I heard you laugh when Dad said you would corner me at Christmas because I would not say no in front of everyone. You chose the audience. You just expected it to work for you. Her face went pale. Tyler stared at his plate. Margaret asked him directly whether he knew the $20,000 amount was false. He first claimed he did not understand the trust, then admitted David had told him to describe every possible expense and roundup. When Margaret asked about the apartment deposit, Tyler's story unraveled further. He confessed that he wanted to move off campus with friends and believed Sophie would eventually pay because she always does. Those 3 words hurt more than any accusation. They also freed me. My generosity had not created gratitude. It had created expectation. I removed the 3rd folder. As of this week, I have ended the insurance and property tax payments I have been making for Mom and Dad. I will not pay Tyler's balance. Replace trust money, co-sign a loan, or finance any future emergency created by dishonesty. Any contact about money must be in writing. David's anger finally broke through. You cannot punish your mother because you are angry with me. I am not punishing either of you. I am stopping payments that were always voluntary. We will lose coverage. Na said, you have income, a new SUV, and a renovated kitchen. You will need to choose what you can afford, just as I have had to do. Margaret then announced that David was suspended from managing the education trust effective immediately. She would send the records to the family attorney, require a full accounting, and demand repayment of every non-educational withdrawal. Until that happened, she would approve only direct payments to accredited schools. No money would pass through David or Tyler. Tyler asked whether the trust would still cover his remaining balance. Margaret answered, the trust already supported you. The money removed for your apartment and equipment will be counted as part of your benefit. The rest is your responsibility. His expression collapsed. Without the extra funding, he could not keep the off-campus apartment, premium setup, and carefree schedule he had promised his friends. He would need to remain in the dorm, return what he could, and find work for the balance. None of those consequences threatened his education. They threatened only the image he had tried to purchase with other people's money. David told Margaret she had no right to embarrass him. Uncle Paul reminded him that he had just tried to embarrass me into paying a fabricated obligation. Another relative asked whether David had ever used trust funds before. The question moved around the table and his reputation. The thing he had protected more carefully than the account began to fracture. My mother started crying. For years, tears had ended difficult conversations in our family because everyone rushed to comfort her before asking what she had done. This time, no one attacked her, but no one changed the subject either. David followed me into the hallway when I picked up my coat. You made your point, he said quietly. Now give me 30 days. Pay the $20,000 and I will return it after I sell something. No, if the attorney sees everything, Margaret will destroy my name. You withdrew the money. You created the bill. You planned the dinner. Your name is facing your choices. He lowered his voice further. I am your father. That should have made me safer with you, not easier to use. Tyler appeared behind him and asked whether I felt proud. I told him I felt finished. I left before dessert, through the front window. I saw the family still seated around the documents. No one was shouting. They were reading. That was the consequence my parents had never expected. They could survive my anger by calling me emotional. They could survive my refusal by calling me selfish. What they could not survive was a room full of people comparing their story to the records. I did not ruin Christmas. I ended the performance. The formal accounting took 6 weeks. It confirmed that $15,700 had been removed from the education trust for expenses that did not qualify. Snorts, with fees and missing documentation included. David was required to repay $17,260. He sold the SUV, postponed the rest of the kitchen renovation, and used part of his savings to restore the account. Margaret became the sole manager, and every future payment went directly to a school. Tyler returned the apartment deposit and sold some of the equipment. He stayed in the dorm, took a weekend job at the campus library, and arranged a payment plan for the remaining $6,240. His life did not collapse. The fantasy that everyone else was responsible for maintaining it did. My parents did lose something important. Access to me without accountability. I did not visit for 3 months. I stopped answering messages that began with guilt, money, or demands to move on. Na sent photographs from happier years. David sent short notes explaining that he had been under pressure. Neither message included an apology, so neither received a response. The $1,150 I had been sending them each month stayed in my account. I used part of it to accelerate my student loan payments and place the rest into a fund for a future home. The first month felt strange. I kept expecting an emergency call that would pull me back into my old role. When it did not come, I realized how much of my life had been organized around preventing consequences for other adults. Tyler eventually wrote me a real letter. He did not blame our parents, his friends, or the cost of college. He admitted that he had treated my success like family property and my boundaries like obstacles. He apologized for helping create the false bill and for expecting the Christmas audience to silence me. I replied once. I told him forgiveness was possible, but financial support was not. Trust would be rebuilt through consistent choices, not speeches. Months later, we met for coffee. The conversation was awkward but honest. That was more valuable than the easy closeness we had pretended to have before. David never offered the same accountability. He told relatives I had overreacted to a loan, but the records remained available, and his version no longer controlled the family. He was not invited to manage shared funds again. Na stopped asking me to rescue him, for the first time. They had to solve their own financial problems inside the limits of their actual income. People sometimes imagine revenge as a dramatic act that makes the person who hurt you suffer instantly. Mine was quieter. I refused the bill. I documented the truth. I stopped subsidizing the people who had mistaken my love for permission. Then I stepped aside and let their own decisions become expensive. The $20,000 stayed mine. More importantly, so did my voice. That Christmas taught me that family loyalty without consent is not loyalty. It is control. Helping someone can be generous, but being forced to finance dishonesty only teaches them that manipulation works. Boundaries do not destroy healthy relationships. They reveal which relationships depended on you having none. So tell me this. If your family placed a false obligation in front of you and called it love, what would you do? Would you keep paying the price just to preserve the peace? Or would you allow the truth to change the table forever? Sometimes the hardest decision is not choosing between right and wrong. It is choosing between the comfort of familiar pain and the uncertainty of a healthier future. Many people spend years carrying responsibilities that were never truly theirs, convincing themselves that sacrifice is the same thing as love. But eventually, every person must decide where their loyalty ends and their self-respect begins. We hope this story left you with something meaningful to carry forward. This story is completely fictional and was created solely for storytelling, entertainment, and educational reflection. Yet the lesson behind it is very real. Some people may never give you the explanation you deserve. They may never admit what they did. They may never offer the apology you waited years to hear. But healing does not always arrive through their understanding. Sometimes it arrives through your acceptance. Sometimes closure is not something another person gives you. Sometimes it is something you choose for yourself. No matter who disappointed you, who betrayed your trust, or who tried to define your worth, you still have the power to decide what happens next. You can choose respect over resentment. You can choose peace over endless arguments. You can choose a future that no longer depends on someone else's approval. Most importantly, you can choose yourself without guilt. Because your story does not have to end at the moment someone hurt you. It does not have to end where you were rejected, ignored, manipulated, or made to feel small. A new chapter can begin the moment you stop waiting for permission to value yourself. And sometimes the most powerful ending is not getting even. It is moving forward. Thank you for watching until the very end. If this story resonated with you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember this: you may not control what happened to you, but you will always have the power to decide what happens next.